Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to discuss some recent Beatle news, and I'll concentrate on what I think is the most important out of all those news items that have happened recently. First of all, Ringo has released 4 new songs. I listened to the single the other day and I listened to the other 3 just now, and I think underwhelmed is the right word. I won't be rude, but he's been doing the same songs with the same lyrics for the last 25 years, and I'm pretty fed up, and I certainly won't be spending 25 quid for 12 minutes of music, which is what his EPs cost these days on vinyl. So that's that. Sean Lennon and James McCartney have come up with a new, inverted commas, Lennon-McCartney song called Primrose Hill, and again, it's a bit of a nothing song. It's about on the same level as Now and Then, actually, as a song. Actually, they're both pretty weak, in my opinion, and I think they should have just not done it. But it's their entitlement; they're entitled to, I suppose. But again, I'm not going to buy it. I listened to it a couple of times and probably won't go back to it. Also, some coloured vinyl or picture vinyl of electronic sound and Wonderwall music from George Harrison. I don't know why he thinks fans... Well, some fans are lapping it up for Record Store Day. I won't be one of them. So, anyway, the major news for me is the fact that the Let It Be movie, which has basically been buried for the last 40-odd years, since the early 80s, is coming out on Disney Plus on May the 8th. Now, this album has acquired a kind of negative reputation, a negative reputation over the years as being associated with the Beatles split, because it was released May the 13th in the US, May the 20th in the UK. That was the premiere, about a month after Paul had basically announced he was leaving. So when fans went to see it, they were already pretty sad, and they saw the kind of tension in the group and they focused on that. And so it was briefly available on VHS in the early 80s, and then it got withdrawn for some reason. And they kept on talking about resurrecting it or releasing it, and it never saw the light of day, and we weren't sure who was holding it up, because over the years, John and George in particular have been very disparaging about those sessions, Paul and Ringo less so. No, even Ringo was negative over the years. But anyway, why is it important? Because since we've got already Peter Jackson's 8-hour Get Back from the other years, so you might ask, why do we need Let It Be? Well, in my opinion, Let It Be complements Get Back. And there's a very interesting interview with Peter Jackson who says just that. The two are meant to go together. There's a lot of bits in Let It Be which Peter Jackson did not include, and if he did include the same bits, he tried to use different angles. So, just off the top of my head, we've got the Beatles performing Susie Parker in the film, which is not in Peter Jackson's movie. Besa Mi Mucho as well, that's quite an amusing bit. You Really Got a Hold on Me. And then there's a comical Long and Winding Road where Paul does the intro, and then he just goes into this opera singer voice for We'll Never Disappear, which is quite amusing. There's lots of good bits in the movie. I mean, yes, it was sad and depressing in places, but not all the way through. I mean, I think it's good to the scene where Lennon's looking bored out of his tree, listening to McCartney going on and on. I think that was quite a judicious piece of editing by Michael Lindsay Hogg. I know Peter Jackson focused on the positive and when they were all happy and smiling, but I think we need a balance, and I think this film will complete the picture, because Get Back was mostly positive, not all positive, of course. This is a little bit on the negative side, but it's also quite realistic. It's reflective of what happened. They were there for a good, best part of a month rehearsing these songs, and it must have got a little, tiring with having the cameras on them the whole time, even when they were trying to have an argument, as George said once. So Peter Jackson, thankfully, is involved he's rejuvenated the sound using the modern technology he used for Get Back. He's done the same with the picture quality. He assures us it's going to be a lot better than 1970, and I believe him. Interesting that Peter Jackson, I was watching a video of him a few months ago, and he said he paid a lot of money for an old VHS copy of Let It Be. Well, I'm not sure if we're going to get a DVD or a Blu-ray of Let It Be. There's no announcement of that. Hopefully that they just keep that under wraps and put it out on Disney Plus and then a few months later they'll slip out the DVD or the Blu-ray for the fans. That's what I'm hoping. If not, I'll have to just get someone to tape it for me from Disney Plus and put it on I'd like to have it in physical format. Other bits in the film which were not featured in Get Back is the full performance of Two of Us, the full performance of Let It Be, and the full performance of Long and Winding Road. If you remember in the Jackson movie, those were sort of done in snippets as almost like an afterthought after the rooftop, because he was going in chronological order. Michael Lindsay Hogg didn't go in chronological order. He covered those 31st of Jan songs earlier in the movie and then finished with the rooftop, which I think is the right way to finish both movies, and that's how both movies basically do finish. So I think Let It Be is an important place in the Beatles' history. It's a historical document. It was released right after the split. As Lindsay Hogg says in a recent interview, he thinks that might have damaged its reputation, but I think it's definitely a ripe case for being reassessed. It's a bit strange looking at the premiere, because none of the Beatles turned up, and you had people like Cynthia Lennon and Jane Asher, these ex-girlfriends or ex-wives, turning up. Richard Lester was there, all the Apple staffers, including Derek Taylor, and Derek Taylor's comment was, "It was bloody sad, bloody awful. In the days after the premiere, I was dreading one of them asking me, 'Did you go to the premiere?'" So yeah, it would have been nice to be there, but it must have been a very sad occasion. So Ringo is on record as saying Lindsay Hogg's film has no joy in it. Well, that's not true. The Rooftop is full of joy, and I think he's being overly negative, so I hope he reassesses it when he watches it. Paul McCartney over the years he said, "It's not me holding up its release," because I think he was the one who was quite fond of Let It Be, but although he was a bit chastened by the criticism he received from not least from Lennon, who said in the Rolling Stone interview, "How did you feel?" Jan Wenner asked him when he saw the movie, and he said, "I felt sad. Let It Be was made by Paul for Paul," which I think is a bit harsh, really. But anyway, John and George over the years pretty consistent in their negativity towards this whole period. But a very interesting story that John Lennon, in the middle of his therapy, his therapist in America asked him to go to see the Let It Be movie to get his. He obviously was feeling quite emotionally distraught after the Beatles split, and so the therapist said, "Go and see the movie." So John and Yoko went with Jan Wenner and Jan Wenner's wife, and they came out of the theatre, and Jan Wenner said they were literally in a four-man huddle crying because it was so emotional and so sad. So I thought that was a very interesting story. By the way, everyone focuses on the row between Paul and George in the Let It Be movie, which was also in Get Back, but actually Giles Martin was right to say it's not that unusual compared to the arguments that most groups have. I forget which group George Martin said he was working with, where he said they had far worse arguments than that. Maybe it was Aerosmith, can't remember. So the album Let It Be, I think, has been reassessed as well. It's no longer the sort of poor relation amongst Beatles fans that it used to be. I remember meeting Michael Palin of Monty Python at a party in 1992, and I was congratulating him on the meaning of life, Monty Python. He said, "Thank you," and I said, "It's the second best film of all time." And he asked me, "Well, what's the best?" And I said, "Let It Be." And he just politely nodded. So I'm glad he didn't say, "Oh, what are you talking about?" Anyway, I was reading some reviews. The Guardian in May 1970, although it says the film is a bore, it says that, but the music never is. And he said this film would have destroyed lesser artists, but here we are staring at the Beatles singing away, and we can forgive them anything, basically. So it ended up not being a very harsh review at all. Rolling Stone have just recently done a very good sort of overview of how this movie was received at the time and how it's been treated over the years and how it's due for reappraisal. I enjoyed that article. And it rightly points out that in 1970 it was a shock to most fans to see the Beatles bickering with each other, because they didn't even know, most fans at the time, that Lennon and McCartney wrote separately even, or that George was being pushed around, or that occasionally the Beatles hated each other's songs. So it was a shock at the time, but now it seems quite tame, really. What else? Yeah, I want to mention, Lennon, well, he did make a good point to Andy Peebles, talking about the later Beatles sessions, saying, I always enjoyed the session if we got our rocks off. If it was a drag, it was a drag. So, he's basically saying they had good days and bad days. Michael Lindsay Hogg, I was doing some research about his resume, and it's very impressive. With the Beatles, he did Paperback Write and Rain, Hey Jude, Revolution, plus the Let It Be film, of course. With Wings, he did the Helen Wheels video, Mull of Kintyre video, With a Little Luck, and London Town. The latter is not his best effort, it has to be said. And then he did a very interesting film in 2000 called Two of Us, with Jared Harris playing John Lennon. I forget who was playing McCartney. But it was basically surrounding the 1976 meeting and allegedly watching Saturday Night Live together, and almost going down to the studio. That's a really good movie if you haven't checked it out. I think it's available on YouTube. Maybe you have to watch it in bits. And then with the Stones, I counted he did no less than 22 videos with the Stones. Now, they're not all good. For example, a lot of the videos for It's Only Rock and Roll album were a bit sort of ordinary, but the title track video is good. And a lot of videos were made for the Black and Blue album, none of which are very memorable in my opinion. But the standout ones for me are the video for Angie and the video for Jumping Jack Flash. I think they're both classics, and the video for Waiting on a Friend from 1981. Other works from Michael Lindsay Hogg include Brideshead Revisited, the classic series from the Evelyn Waugh novel, 1981, that came out. He was also going out with Jean Marsh in the late 60s, which is interesting. There's a Doctor Who connection there, because Jean Marsh used to be married to John Pertwee. And the interesting story, like Lindsay Hogg said, that when he had the final cut of Let It Be ready, they all went out to dinner. This was in late 69. He says John, Yoko, Paul, Linda, Michael Lindsay Hogg, and I guess Jean Marsh, because I think he was going out with her at the time. I'm not 100% sure. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to Let It Be. It's well due a reappraisal. And I bet you, when it does come out, I bet you Peter Jackson's done a fantastic job, and we're going to think this isn't half as bad as we remembered. Not that I remember it badly at all, because it's always been a big favourite of mine. So, and by the way, it's very good timing, because it's my birthday on the 13th of May, so this is going to come out a few days in time for that. So, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.